Now that the election is out of the way, the real agenda can begin. There's nothing unusual about this. It happens with depressing regularity after elections in Australia. But on this occasion, the change of direction is radical. 2 months later, Chalmers commissioned a review of the Reserve Bank of Australia by 3 economists, including Labor apparatchik Dr. Gordon de Bruer. To be fair, the review had been promised during the election, but it was hardly a prominent policy. And besides, few voters would have realised just how radical such a review could be. To quote again from Chalmers' essay in the Monthly in February, quote, 2023 will be the year we build a better capitalism, uniquely Australian, more confident and forward-thinking, more aligned with our values, unquote. Well, those are Chalmers' values, but as you'll see in a minute, they aren't necessarily yours. The inquiry's report, published yesterday, made 51 recommendations. Chalmers agreed with all of them.
Now, we want to make sure that Australia's monetary policy framework delivers the right decisions and makes the right calls for the Australian economy and for the Australian people. That's what has been motivating this report, the work of the review panel and the thinking of the Albanese government for some months. Now, the government agrees in principle with all 51 of the recommendations made in this report that I'm releasing today.
The recommendation that grabbed all the headlines was the one saying the Reserve Bank should be relieved of its responsibility for setting interest rates, and that job should be given to a new board, the Monetary Policy Board, which will meet only 8 times a year. 3 of the board are from Treasury and the Reserve Bank. The other 6 are recommended to the Treasurer, who then appoints them. These people will indirectly decide the interest rate of your mortgage at every stage of the electoral cycle, including in the months leading up to a federal election. There's no evidence that Chalmers himself would allow this to influence his decisions on who to appoint to the board, but he is proposing to introduce a process where it is possible for subsequent treasurers to do so. The recommendations also included this. Quote, the RBA should continue to integrate the implications of climate change for the Australian economy and financial systems into its analysis and contribute more generally to the effective regulation of banking and finance on climate risk and natural capital management through the Council of Financial Regulators and International Forums, unquote. Well, the report says that the best way to do this is through fiscal policy, which is essentially just how the government taxes us and spends our money, as well as regulatory policies. The word it uses here is targeted, as in targeting specific types of taxes and government expenditure. And this is where the idea of a central bank digital currency comes in. This is central bank digital currency is a radical departure from conventional money. It will still change hands just like normal money does, but it is also programmable, meaning it could be restricted to be used only, for example, on edible insects instead of meat, on an electric vehicle instead of a petrol-powered one, or on clothes made from recycled materials instead of from recently shorn wool. This isn't idle conjecture. These are the values that Chalmers was talking about in his essay and which are buried in this new report's recommendations about climate change.